Are you a fan of the Mommy Wines podcast? Well, of course you are, or you wouldn't be hearing this right now. One of the best ways to support the show you love, besides obviously tuning in every Wine Wednesday for new episodes, is shopping the Mommy Wines merch store on teespring.com. This is where you'll find all of the Mommy Wines branded goodness, mugs to hold your coffee over cardio morning Java, iPhone and Samsung cases, premium ultra soft hoodies perfect for upcoming cooler months, and of course, flowy tees and tanks flattering on every mommy out there. Go shop the Mommy Wine storefront on teespring.com and make sure to use code WINEMOM for free shipping. The Mommy Wines podcast is a Mommy Wines Network and Emma Dawn production, brought to you by Coffee Over Cardio, NakedWines.com, and Zaya Active. In this two-part episode of the Mommy Wines podcast, motherhood and lifestyle YouTuber and Instagrammer Megan from Loving Life as Megan opens up about her experiences with postpartum anxiety and depression. This is a topic that touches roughly 20% of new mothers on a deep level. Baby blues, postpartum depression, and postpartum anxiety, along with all other forms of mental illness, should be taken seriously. Self-care and mental health isn't selfish or greedy, it's necessary. As always, I share these episodes to spread awareness and show support for other mothers and women. I hope that only love, support, and positivity will come out of Megan being brave enough to open up honestly about her experience in the efforts to help other mothers who are suffering from similar issues. If you or someone you know is suffering from postpartum mental health issues, please don't be afraid to get help. You can also visit www.postpartum.net.
I would rather be back in those days than be where I'm at now, because I didn't know that postpartum anxiety was even a thing, and I did not have any anxiety issues prior to this happening, so I didn't even know how to identify anxiety before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I had no idea, and I was just thinking like that it was normal, but it wasn't. And then because it went like undiagnosed, untreated in any way, it just started ramping up to the point where like not only was I checking on her breathing, but I was having paranoid anxiety. So I was like convinced that someone was either living in my attic or somewhere in my house or going to break into my house and kill my family. And it went from like just being worried about Sawyer dying to being worried about all of us dying. And if I wasn't worried about that, then I was worried that the house was going to burn down or something was going to happen. And at this point, I was still working full time. So I would go to work, and I was in a marketing position, and I traveled a lot for work. So I would go to work and I would have to bring my makeup bag with me because I would have full-blown panic attacks in my car, like completely ruining my makeup and just ridiculous, because I'm going over it in my head like the house is going to burn down, and if the house burns down, how am I going to save both of my children? And what if like, and I would go through it, and I can still think of it now. Like, our house isn't that large, so I would just tell myself like I'm going to run to Sawyer's room first and pick her up and go right across to Kinsley's room and open the window in Kinsley's room and just kind of shove them both out the window, and that will fix it. Like, that'll be fine. And if there's not enough time to do that, there's two of us, me and Derek, so I'll go to one room, he'll go to one room, and we'll just get them out the windows in their respective rooms, and that would be fine. And then I would start panicking because I would say, that's too simple. Like, that's too simple of a solution, that I'm missing something. Like, what is it that I'm missing? What is it that I'm not thinking of? Like, what scenario am I not thinking of that would prevent that from being like how I would save them? And I would start working up and freaking out. And then I'd do that all day long, like with that scenario and other scenarios. every day when I dropped them off, Kinsley to school, she was in kindergarten at the time, and Sawyer to her daycare, I would be convinced that that was the last time I was ever going to see my kids.
Oh my
And,
God.
and so I would panic all day long, and then I'd come home and I'd pick them up and bring them home every day and just be a mess, thinking like somebody got into the house while I was at work and they're here and they're just waiting for their opportunity. I would not sleep at night because I would be like either staring at the bathroom doors or staring at our attic door, just waiting to see that person that had to be there. And so like the insomnia was intense, which a lot of people don't know this, but insomnia is a symptom of anxiety.
Yeah.
So I would go through all of that, and it got to a point where Derek and I were going out on a date one night, our first date since Sawyer had been born. And in the car on the way to the restaurant, I just broke down and I was like, I think that I'm schizophrenic, and I think that like I need to be committed or something because this is what's going on. And I hadn't yet talked to my doctor about it, so I didn't know that it could be anxiety or anything else. And I was so scared. I was like, if I tell anybody this, like even if I tell my doctor, what if he wants to commit me and then I won't see my kids anymore? Or what if they want to take the kids? Or like, what is the game plan for this?
Yeah.
And eventually I did tell my doctor, and eventually meaning like that same week I made the appointment. I told my doctor, he gave me a psych referral, and it was officially diagnosed as postpartum anxiety.
So what did your husband say when you told him?
He was so supportive.
Really?
Like, oh my gosh, yes. He was just like, I still love you. Like, it's okay. We're going to figure it out together. We're going to handle it together. Just for the record, it was definitely not schizophrenia. I wasn't having like auditory delusions or anything like that, which is what schizophrenia was. Like, I wasn't hearing voices or anything. Nothing was telling me to harm myself or my kids or anything like that. I was just it was paranoid anxiety. So, but no, he was on it. He's like, the kids aren't going to be taken. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen to them. Nothing's going to happen to you. Like, we're going to get through it, and we're just going to do what we have to do, and then you'll be fine. And he's still like that. So when I went to the referral, when I first approached my doctor and then to the referral, the symptoms that I was talking about were the paranoid thoughts, the panic attacks, which were obvious, the not letting people like touch my kids or be around my kids, not wanting to socialize in general, distancing myself from my friends and family, and extreme irritability, which is another thing that people don't know is a symptom of anxiety, but like extreme irritability where I could be completely fine and then the smallest thing will just set me off and I'm screaming and yelling at everybody and just like freaking out. So that led to my diagnosis. And then from there, my doctor was basically like, we don't have very many options, but you have let it go to the point where like you could be committed. So we need to like lessen the stress in your life, because that was something that would instigate it too, is I had such a tight schedule that even if like 5 minutes, like waking up 5 minutes late ruined my whole day, as far as like my schedule went. And then I was like extra stressed, which would leave me extra susceptible to an anxiety attack and stuff. So what we decided was that I was going to have to quit my job, that the anxiety had become debilitating and I needed to go from being a working mom to a stay-at-home mom, which was hard for me because while that like is something that some women dream of, and like all the power to them and all the credit to them, it is so difficult to be a stay-at-home mom. It was just not something I ever saw for my life. So it was a very humbling experience. So I quit my job. It helped a little bit. For a whole list of reasons, medication isn't really an option for me. So I couldn't be medicated, and I just had to basically do therapy, and we talked to Derek about like what the red flags are, how to handle it, curb it, um, like more natural preventative measures. I have to be like incredibly self-aware, and practice being self-aware and being able to identify things and just all kinds of stuff. But anyway, this is a very long story.
Don't let the holiday treats slow you down. Zaya Active has your back. Well, your backside, that is. With premium activewear from Zaya Active, you'll be set to crush your health and wellness goals even if you surrender to a few holiday cravings. Zaya Active's most popular items are their joggers and the light and tight leggings. Both are ideal for colder weather. The light and tights are made of the highest quality sweat wicking, breathable, compressive, quick drying, and squat proof materials. And from now through the holidays, I am extending my rep discount to every one of my listeners. That's right, 25% off your order now through the holidays. So cross off the activewear lover on your list and use the savings to treat yourself at myzaya.com/Amadon. And DM me on Instagram to place your order with my 25% off rep discount now through the holidays. Once again, that's myzaya.com/Amadon. myzya.com/Amadon.
That's what made me start sharing it, is that I was going through all of these things. And first, I didn't even start sharing it on Instagram first. What happened is, because of all of that, like, of course, feeling that way, my mind is a mess.
Yeah.
So my house reflected it. It went from like my house being in pristine condition, ready for guests all the time, to being a complete wreck, like just overly cluttered and chores not getting done and stuff like that. It was like a physical manifestation of my anxiety. So that I started my YouTube channel for that reason, to keep myself accountable, that if I have to film myself cleaning my house and decluttering my house and stuff, then um if I have to film myself doing that, that means I have to keep the house clean, or I have to at least clean it a few days a week. And so it won't be this complete disaster every single day for my family. So I started uploading to my YouTube channel for that. And I would get questions in the comments, or I did a couple of Q&A videos on my channel where people would ask me, why did you start your channel? And I told them, I was very honest. I was like, I developed debilitating postpartum anxiety and my house was a mess because of that. And so I started my channel to keep myself accountable for my house to not be a mess. And every time I would talk about it on YouTube, I would get people that would find me on Instagram and message me and be like, what is postpartum anxiety? Or what do you mean? I think I have those same symptoms.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's being diagnosed. I've heard, like people say like, oh, everybody has anxiety nowadays, but I think it's not everybody. I think everybody has anxious moments. Like there's always going to be like that instinct of like fight or flight. Right. So everyone experiences anxiety, but I think there's more people who have like struggles with it or coping with it, managing it. Someone might have like a heightened sense of anxiety, or maybe somebody just like is perfectly capable of navigating those anxious feelings, like, without tripping and falling. Mm-hmm. That unfortunately is not me. I'm an anxious wreck, but I don't know. I just think like when people talk about it and people share their experiences with it, it inspires other people to talk about it and share their experiences with it. So I don't think like all of a sudden, every millennial has anxiety. I think it's just becoming more aware of it.
That's exactly what happens. That's it. Because you like really hit the nail on the head, because like what I was saying with mentioning it on YouTube, I would get messages. So then I would like started creating posts on Instagram. And at first they were those like pretty filtered well thought out, like written and rewritten before published type of post that I was talking about before. And then I just decided one day, like, that's not enough. If I'm going to share it and talk about it, then I'm going to be so realistic and transparent that it hurts, or I'm not going to do it at all. So I started creating these posts where I was doing that. I was saying, like, I looked at my 5-year-old today and screamed in her face, and I feel awful, like so guilty about it. I apologized to her later, but I was having an anxiety attack, and it came out as an angry outburst, and like, this is a symptom of anxiety, and so if you experience these things too, know that you're not alone. Or I've talked about the insomnia before and stuff. Like, I don't post every single day about it, but when it gets really bad, I start posting. I talk in my stories about it and say, like, I go through periods of time where I'm on my Instagram stories a lot, and then I go through periods of time where you don't see my face at all. And usually I'll tell people, like, you haven't seen me because I'm an anxious mess, and like, this is what's going on. And as I started sharing those things, every single time I share anything about my anxiety, I get floods of DMs, so many that it's impossible to keep up with, of people saying, like, I experienced the same thing, or I'm so scared to talk about it. I haven't even told my friends and family yet because I'm afraid of what they're going to think, what's going to happen to me, am I going to be committed, which were all fears that I had myself.
Yeah.
But it also proves that, like, if you can talk to me, a complete stranger, on an Instagram DM and tell me, like, the most vulnerable things about yourself and your life, just because you're so desperate to be able to relate to someone, which, that's sad, like, that you have to resort to that, like, confiding in a complete stranger who has opened up saying, like, they experience those same things, before you can confide in anyone in your actual life because you're terrified. It just shows that there's not enough awareness about it.
Yeah.
And as many people that DM me that say, oh my gosh, I have these same symptoms, and like, maybe I should be seen to see if I have the same diagnosis. Like, I didn't even know that that was a thing. I didn't even know it existed. I was that same person. Like, here I am taking all of these measures to prevent against postpartum depression, not even knowing that postpartum anxiety existed and was separate from postpartum depression. And I mean, it's like, it's just insane. So you're completely correct in that it's not that it's trending to have anxiety or any mental health issues or illnesses. It's just that they were not talked about before, and now they're talked about. And so more people feel comfortable saying, like, I experience that too, or identifying that they experience that too, and maybe they should get some help.
Yeah. The holidays are fast approaching, and what would make a better gift for the wine lover in your life, or even maybe yourself, than a nakedwines.com wine box? I have loved trying the nakedwines.com wines, and my taste palette has definitely become more sophisticated. Plus, all the wines from nakedwines.com are crafted by independent, passionate winemakers, not big label brands that have more additives in their bottles than actual wine itself. Get a nakedwines.com wine box delivered, filled with wines made with love, directly to your door this holiday season. Use code MOMMYWINES50 to get 6 bottles for only $34.99. That's MOMMYWINES50 to get 6 bottles of wine for only $34.99 from nakedwines.com. Or you can go ahead and click the link in the show notes below. So you did mention that keeping yourself accountable, uploading on your YouTube channel, but what are some other ways that, like, you're coping with these? Because you said you're not medicated. And
Right.
I'm not fond of pharmaceutical drugs, but I'm currently, I'm taking medication for my anxiety, and it's because here where I live in Utah, I was going through a like a custody battle, and my son's dad tried to use my anxiety against me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there
That's
was
awful, by the
yeah,
way. I am
oh yeah,
so sorry for
he's
you.
a bag
That
of
was
dicks. He sucks.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, so like there was nothing besides, making changes to my diet that I could really do that was like outside of, like having a doctor's written note, because my doctor had to like write a note to the court saying that like I'm still able to take care of my child. I'm not
Right.
like a crazy person. But
Which, and that's something too, like on its own, that um people just don't, they just don't understand, like if you haven't experienced it. And I was one of those people, I will fully admit, like because I had never experienced any kind of anxiety before, I was one of those people that was just like, suck it up, you're fine, like people do life every day, why are you like bedridden, can't leave your house, can't go to social anything, like why are you so worried, why are you a helicopter person in general, not even always helicopter parent. And it's like, it's disgusting that I ever felt that way or thought that way or talked that way, having now experienced it. Like, but unless you do experience it, you just can't grasp it.
yeah,
And it's so sick when people will try to use it against you, like what you're talking about with your son's father. Like that is, it's deplorable that he would even think that that's on the table to come at you with. Like that's just insane. But um I can't take medication. I Because of my previous depression issues, I had been medicated quite a few times when I was an adolescent and teenager and an early adult. Um, and a lot of anxiety medications that are available are also antidepressants. So I had been medicated a few times in my life for those other issues. And every single time, no matter what the medication was, different brands, different dosages, anything, every single time I experienced the less than 1% of suicidal tendencies and like those symptoms for me. And the one time that I did not experience suicidal tendencies as a result of the medication, what happened is it had me bedridden. Like I just could not stay awake, and no matter how much they lowered the dosage, I just could not get out of my bed. I couldn't function. So my doctor is actually the one who said to me, medication is not an option for you because we can't really play around with it and hope that you don't kill yourself.
right.
And we can't we can't have you bedridden because you're staying at home. You're the sole caretaker while your husband's at work for this infant at the time. And now like she's still a baby, and I have a whole family here, and I have to be able to function. And then aside from that, I'm also breastfeeding. So not a lot of medications are available for breastfeeding moms.
Yeah, I think
And
that
the ones,
the one that I take, I had to be on a lower dose. He said it was safe, but he said I did have to take like a smaller dose while I was breastfeeding, and then it was readjusted after I stopped. But
yeah.
he's like, you
Well,
don't
and
have very many options if you're gonna continue breastfeeding. And I had this
yeah.
whole thing in my head where I really wanted to breastfeed for at least 12 months. I didn't put like a ton of pressure on myself because you never know what's gonna happen, but like that was like the goal. Um, and
Well,
I'm
congratulations to you, by the way. That's like an amazing thing to
thanks.
even be able to go like 1 hour breastfeeding. I think is
Oh,
just, it should be celebrated for everybody. Every milestone that they get to is just it's such a wonderful thing.
like I would nurse again if I had another kid, but like I'm not gonna sit here and say that like it's fun because
No.
breastfeeding freaking sucks.
It's not for the faint of heart, that's for
It's
sure. Like there's
work.
definitely a reason why 6 weeks is like the cutoff for most women. Like it is hard.
Oh, really? Is
It's
that
hard
like a
work.
common thing? Like they'll like breastfeed for like the first 6 weeks, or do they just give up because it's hard?
Yeah, I think it's just in America, the average age of weaning is like 6 weeks or 12 weeks or something like that. And yeah, it's because they just give up. Like a lot of women have a hard time trusting that their body is making enough milk.
I had that. Like that made me real. Like I took Milo into the doctor so many times, like outside of his wellness checks, or like I would just stop in and like ask the nurse to weigh him.
Yep.
Because like, and she would, and like she didn't look at me like I was weird or anything, because I'm like, okay, well obviously I'm not the only person that's doing this.
Yeah.
But like,
And that's probably because of your anxiety too.
well, it's just,
really,
it's weird because like I did both. I pumped and I nursed. So like I was like frantic about having this like freezer stash, because I was concerned that if I couldn't like breastfeed him, then like I could at least give him a bottle of like breast milk. Because like the lactation consultant at the hospital was like, okay, well, he's doing good now, but if things change in a couple weeks, you know, she kept saying like, don't get upset, you know, because who knows, like you could be in the hospital and your baby and you could be doing amazing, and then a week later you go, you know, like you're at home and all of a sudden they don't want to latch, or you know, like whatever happens, who knows what's going on inside your body. But
well, and what happens too is like, so I think that the 6-week thing or the 12-week thing happens because at those times they go through physical growth spurts.
Oh yeah.
And when they do, they cluster feed.
Ugh.
So they're insatiable. And a lot of women think that just means like their milk dried up or they're not making enough anymore and they need to give them formula. And it couldn't be further from the truth.
No, your baby's just a food disposal.
Yeah, they're just telling your body like, hey, I'm growing, make some more. And so they do that for quite a few days, and then the cluster feeding stops, and because your body does, it's a supply and demand process. So they're just they're telling your body, hey, I'm going to start demanding more, you need to make more. And then the other thing too is like, you know, there's just the marketing about pregnancy, postpartum, and breastfeeding in general is so like terrible that it makes women think that like pregnancy is going to be a breeze. It's such a beautiful thing. It's going to be so fun. And it is a beautiful thing. And it's like, it's an amazing thing, but it's not always fun. It's not always easy breezy. And then postpartum, it's like the same thing. It's like instantly falling in love with your child and like this incredible, like beautiful emotion, and everything's just rainbow and butterflies, and like you're going to be super mom and everything's going to be perfect because you've got this baby now. And then same with breastfeeding, it's like, oh, this is as nature intended, and it's just like this natural thing, which means it's an easy thing. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It is as nature intended, and it is a natural thing, and it is a beautiful thing, but it's a hard thing. Like,
yeah, it's
when
super
you start
hard
doing that, and it hurts at first, and no one is prepared for that. No one knows that like it hurts until you toughen up type of thing. And no one is prepared for like the cluster feeding, because it's something that people don't talk about, and the trusting your body, and like, you know, all of that, just people don't know because the marketing for it is awful. And then the formula industry came in and like, well, sprouted up, I guess, and just started this like, formula is the same as breast milk, and so why not just do formula instead, because this is easier. And it was also a socioeconomic thing at the time, that like you were the cream of the crop, like only the, you know, I don't want to say rich people, but like your family was well off if you could afford formula.
Oh yeah.
So it became this thing where women wanted to formula feed their babies because they associated it with like, you know, being higher up in the hierarchy of society, and which is how it was marketed, you know. And so there's just all of this, there's these alternatives now, so people don't
they could afford the leisure of not having to breastfeed.
Right. And I mean, and I'm not like, I hope this doesn't come across as me talking down about formula feeding, because I'm definitely a fed is best. You do what's right for yourself and your baby and your family. And there's tons of reasons why women can't or won't breastfeed, and whatever your choice is, it's valid for your family. But
see, when I was taking these classes, when I was pregnant with Milo, and they were free at my local hospital. It was actually the hospital that I delivered him at.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, I think 8 or like 12-week classes where it covered everything from like pregnancy to toddlerhood. And before I had Milo, when I was still pregnant, I was like, I'm not cloth diapering. That's gross. How am I going to clean my washing machine? And then I like did not want to have like a natural birth. I wanted all of the drugs. I wanted to just like schedule a C-section. I wanted them to like put me under, do what they had to do, and then like wake me up like it was getting my wisdom teeth removed. I thought breastfeeding was so weird. I'm like, I'm
Right.
going to feel like a pervert. It's so weird. Why would a baby even want to do that? And then I had Milo, and I'm like, I'm such an idiot. Like,
Oh yeah. That's literally how I was. Well, I didn't take those classes. My hospital didn't offer those classes, but I was the same, not necessarily in exactly what I wanted, but in my thought process too. Like I hadn't even considered breastfeeding prior to like midway through. I still don't even know like exactly what spurred the thoughts or like for me to make that decision, but I didn't even think of it. Like it what I didn't to be quite honest, like it sounds kind of stupid, but for like the first half of my pregnancy, I didn't even know what breastfeeding was. Like I had never been exposed to it at any other point in my life, so I didn't know that was an option. I'm just going through the motions thinking like I'm just going to give my kid a bottle because every kid I've ever seen has just had a bottle. Like
yeah.
I didn't even know. And I was the opposite in that I was hell-bent and determined I was not having a C-section because I didn't want to have an epidural because I'm terrified of needles, which is so funny because if you've seen like some of my pictures on Instagram,
You have so many tattoos.
Yes, yeah, but I'm terrified of needles. So I wanted a completely natural birth because I didn't want to have an IV or an epidural. So, which is like when people hear me talk about how I had unmedicated deliveries and natural births, they almost like roll their eyes that I'm like one of those moms. But if you hear my reasoning for it, like that's why I say like anybody's reasons for anything are valid.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with wanting to do the best for my body or for my baby. It had everything to do with avoiding the epidural because I'm terrified of the needle. So, but it was crazy. And it was a complete shock to me because I was induced with both of my girls. So when I went in to be induced with Kinsley, it was a complete shock to me that I had to have an IV. And it was the first time in my life that I was ever like aware of where I had to have an IV.
Oh no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're
it was
already
awful.
getting an IV. You might as well have just gotten the epidural.
Are you a coffee lover just like me? Sipping my morning Java is the only way I can keep up with my toddler and busy lifestyle. That's why I love Coffee Over Cardio. Coffee Over Cardio is a premium coffee company started by female entrepreneur Abby Scott. Whether you love a good flavored blend or a strong roast, Coffee Over Cardio is ideal for any jitterbug. They are also carb-free, keto-friendly, sugar-free, and gluten-free. So pretty much that means they're completely guilt-free. Try Coffee Over Cardio's most popular flavors today: French toast and new Doctor's Orders vanilla hazelnut. Yum! Make sure to use code 10EMMADON to save at checkout. Once again, that's 10EMMADON at coffeeovercardio.com.
For me, like, so I had a really complicated delivery. Mm-hmm. And I actually ended up getting an emergency C-section. But
I'm so sorry.
We're both fine. It's done and over. It was just really stressful. But they came in and they gave me the IV. And I feel like the IV, anytime you get an IV, it is so painful, no matter what. If you move your hand, whatever, it just is pressure and it hurts. Mm-hmm. But then they came in and they gave me the epidural and they had to give it to me 3 times because Milo
I was having a lot of back labor, and he kept kicking it out of place.
Oh.
And at that point, like at the third time, and it would like last for like a half hour, and then he'd kick it out of place at like the next contraction or whatever, and then it would be like I'd just be like back in pain. And so we actually ended up getting an emergency C-section. And when they were like talking about it, and they're like, if this baby keeps kicking this epidural out of place, and I have like some back issues from a car accident, so it was hard for them to give it to me in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor's like, or the anesthesiologist is like, how are we going to give her a spinal tap? Like, what if the spinal tap doesn't take and the same thing happens? So they gave me like oxygen and this medicine to like kind of calm Milo down.
Mm-hmm.
So they could give me the spinal tap and then go in and have a C-section and get him like out. And luckily it did not get out of place. I was perfectly numb.
I would have been terrified.
It was not
That's
fun.
like giving me anxiety just hearing it. Like I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah, not fun. And I'm just like you. Like anybody who sits there and they're like, pregnancy's like Kourtney Kardashian, for example.
Mm-hmm.
This crazy girl freaking thinks that like pregnancy is just the most beautiful thing and that she just loves being pregnant. And I had moments where like I connected with Milo, like I really like enjoyed like being pregnant with him, but they were just moments. It wasn't the whole time. Like pregnancy was it's shitty, and it was like summertime, and I was hot, and I was large, and
Yeah.
it was just uncomfortable, and all the anxiety of like worrying about my baby. And then after having him and all of these things, and it's just like it's just a lot to go through. And
oh gosh. Oh, I'm just getting like the heebie-jeebies just thinking about like pregnancy and delivery again, because while I didn't have like near what you talked about, I didn't experience anything like that. I did I had like I was induced both times, and what I don't know if you were induced or not. But
yeah, I was. Milo was 2 weeks late.
Oh really?
Oh,
wow. So I was I went a little bit overdue, just a few days overdue with Kinsley, and they ended up inducing me because of complications that were happening with her. And then I was induced early with Sawyer because of all the complications that had happened in my pregnancy with her. But induced labor is no joke. It is like so much more intense than natural labor because they're forcing your body to do that before it's ready. And it's just awful. But both times I did it unmedicated, no epidural. And it was just like, it was intense. It like at that point, it's like an extreme desire to not get an epidural if you'd rather go through pushing out both babies. Kinsley was 8 pounds 9 ounces, and Sawyer was 8 pounds 6 ounces.
Oh, geez.
So pushing them out and going through those induced contractions just to not have to experience a needle. I bet
dedication.
Roll their eyes at me, but
that's dedication to your fear for sure. After all of that happened with my delivery, I don't know, like the nurse came in, and I was still like super heavily medicated, and she was like the lactation nurse. So she just kind of gave Milo to me, and she's like, okay, nurse him. And I just kind of like did in this hazy, foggy, like moment. Like I have no idea what's going on. And he just like latched perfectly. And then we like fell asleep. And it was just like every like weird feeling I had about it, or weird like preempted thought I had about it, I don't know, like it just like seemed natural to me, so we just kept doing it.
See, for me, it was like it was a little different. So I didn't even know, like I said, about breastfeeding until like halfway through my pregnancy with Kinsley. I realized that that was a choice I needed to make, if I was going to formula feed her or breastfeed her, or that it was a choice in general. Like I always just assumed formula. But anyway, so I was doing my research about it and I was dreading it because I don't like to have my nipples touched. So I was like, if I already don't even like I don't even like it when my clothes brush up against them, how am I going to nurse a child?
Right.
Who, like, that's the only way to nurse them, is like, you can't nurse a baby without them touching your nipples. So I was like terrified. I was dreading it. And then I had Kinsley, and she had a tongue and lip tie that I didn't even know that that existed. Like, she's my first baby, so I
Yeah.
didn't even know to have that checked for. So she shredded my nipples. They were literally just scabs
Milo
until
had
she
that too.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, well, it prevented her from getting a good enough latch. So my nipples were just scabbed for like 7 months until she grew out of it.
Aw.
Because when I would tell her pediatrician, like, she's still breastfeeding, but this is what's going on. I don't know if her pediatrician just at the time wasn't like, didn't know to check for those things, or like wasn't all that familiar with breastfeeding moms or something. Cause it really isn't like, it wasn't that common anyway at the time for a mom to be breastfeeding, especially extended breastfeeding. So, but eventually she just grew out of it. With Sawyer, I knew to check for that right away. So she had a tongue tie, and they actually clipped it in the hospital before we ever, like, she was only a couple hours old, which made it a lot easier, with the nursing thing. But, so the medications that are safe for breastfeeding moms, a lot of them are like, have antihistamine properties or are antihistamines, and that's not safe if you have bipolar depression. So it will exaggerate the symptoms of bipolar depression to take those kinds of medications.
Oh, so you're
Um,
trading one for the other?
yeah. So my doctor was basically like, there's nothing medication wise that we can do for you. Or we could, but it's like, it comes at a great risk, and and it would basically be going against medical advice to
Yeah.
try it at this point. So that wasn't really an option. So it's not that I'm not against medication. To be honest, more days than not, I wish I could take it because I know it would help. Um, but just for me, it's just not an option. And anytime I talk about my anxiety too, or talk about the fact that I'm unmedicated, I get tons of DMs, and to be honest, they irritate me so much because it's people saying like, well, have you seen a doctor? Why won't you get on medication? You should be on medication if you're experiencing these things. Or if you don't want to take a medication, how about you try this CBD stuff that I take? And I'm just like, that is so insulting. Like, who
Right.
are you? You don't know my medical history. You know only what you're seeing in an Instagram post. And while I appreciate like that you might be concerned, that's not the way to go about expressing your concern, because nowhere on my post did it say, hey, can you message me with what you think I should do about my anxiety?
Right. That's just,
And
people just, I think, feel so entitled to share their opinions when people share any kind of video or photo or message on the internet. You know, they're like, oh, well, you're sharing this, so I'm entitled to share my opinion. But in reality, like, you're not. You're just being a troll on the internet.
right. And some of those people are exploiting it. Like I've had people that have said, hey, I've tried this CBD stuff and it worked for me. I've had other people that like are multi-level marketers that sell these products, and they're like,
right.
hey, I saw that you have these anxiety issues. I have this product. Do you want to check out my online store? It's like, no, I don't. I mean, I really appreciate that, like, that's how you're making your living, and more power to you, but this is the absolute wrong approach
Yeah.
for how to sell your products or try to sign somebody into your downline. Like, maybe it works for some personality types, but to me it just feels like you're trying to take advantage, and that's gross.
Yeah.
But so I can't be medicated for a whole slew of reasons. But what I do is I've always kind of been pretty self-aware, and I just practice staying self-aware. And so now, and I've educated myself a lot, like on my own, with my doctor, with a counselor, like what all of the possible symptoms are, what exactly are the symptoms that I have experienced, what are some of the triggers that I can identify. I'm always working to identify the triggers and more triggers, how to curb it, how to be prepared for it. um, Derek can pretty much tell at this point when I'm feeling super anxious, and he practices a lot of patience with me, and I really
Aw.
really appreciate. I mean, he's just like the model husband when it comes to dealing with this, but just gives me a lot of patience and a lot of support. And so I practice being self-aware. I practice being self-aware of how I react to those triggers and things. I try my hardest. Like, I'm not at all perfect, and I don't always have a handle on it. So while I know that like the irritability is a symptom of like high anxiety, there are some times when I just walk away and I take a second to myself, and that helps me. And then there's other times where I don't like walk away like I should, and I just let it keep going until I explode. And then I kind of just have to be like a puppy with my tail between my legs and be humble and apologize, um and try again the next time, try to do better. It sounds maybe silly, but I've also noticed that like anytime that I'm outside for a while, it like lifts my mood in general, which it doesn't like take away my anxiety, but it definitely curbs it. Like, I'm not quite as irritable. Those are the days where I can make the right decisions to just like walk away, calm down, or um whatever it is that I'm doing to kind of like avoid having an attack or an outburst.
I
So
think
I'm
anybody
sure
will
that's
agree
because
with that. Like being out and like, even if it's like cooler like it is now, like the
Mhm.
sunshine or just being
it,
outside in the grass or
it's that vitamin D.
yeah.
It works. So I do that. I go on a walk like every mid-morning with Sawyer before her nap. And that helps a lot. And the days that we miss it, I can see like a huge difference. So I don't know. Um, but yeah, it's mostly just that I could exercise more, because I know like exercising is a natural release of endorphins, but I'm one of those people that just tells myself I don't have the time.
Well,
Um,
yeah, exercising isn't really all that fun. But when
and
I
I
was
don't, oh, sorry, go
oh
ahead.
no. When I was going to the gym like regularly with Milo, I would go like 5 days a week, and we kind of had like a routine. I felt so much better. And I used to have a dog, and I would walk the dog every time like Milo would take a nap. And back then, I just felt so much better than I do now, because now like I'm back at work full time, and I moved from Nevada to Utah, so I no longer have my dog. He's living with his best friend.
Aw.
So they kind of took him over while I adjusted to moving and living here in Salt Lake. And but I don't know, like I kind of feel like I might want to get a dog, or like even I don't know if you listen to any other podcasts, but I love Caitlin Bristow, and she used to be on The Bachelor. Well, she was on The Bachelor, and she was the Bachelorette.
Mm-hmm.
And she got a dog. She adopted. His name is Ramen, and she like registered him as a like an emotional support animal.
Aw.
And now he can like fly with her, he can like live with her, stay in hotels, like wherever she owns her house, luckily. But yeah, like she rescued him from this like awful place in like Korea, where
Oh.
they were uh like beating and abusing dogs. And they did it, so the story is that they get golden retrievers, because golden retrievers are so forgiving and so loyal.
Mm-hmm.
that the people would breed these golden retrievers and then like torture them and abuse them. And they would do that over and over and over again until they killed them and cooked them, because they said the meat from an abused animal, like something happens when the animal is abused. It releases some kind of, like kind of like an endorphin into the muscles and through the bloodstream that makes the meat taste better.
That's
And
awful.
it's disgusting, but they do it to golden retrievers, because no matter what you do to a golden retriever, they're just so tame and loyal and kind and loving that it was easier for them to do that to an animal like that than it would be to like a pit bull or a German shepherd that's gonna like kind of stand up for itself.
Right. That
um
is so awful.
isn't that gross? So
Yes.
she rescued her golden retriever Ramen from Bunny's Buddies, which is the rescue that goes over and saves these abused animals in Korea and Asia. Um, and then now she's like registered him. She paid for like all of his surgeries and to like get him back up and healthy again. But yeah, she registered him as like an emotional support animal. So I'm like, I'm kind of thinking I might want to do that, because I felt so much better like just going on like a 15-minute walk every day with the dog. Like, I don't know, that little part of the routine in my day, just being outside, playing with the dog, it just made me feel so much better. And I was so much happier back then too.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we like discount it, how much of a difference it can make, but it really can. We have 2 dogs also. One of our dogs is a rescue, and then one is a pug that Derek had from a breeder. But when we take them on our Sawyer and I take them on our walks when we go, and it does like just the exercise in general, like it does wonders for the dogs, it does wonders for the humans, like
Yeah.
and I probably, like I said, I probably should exercise more than I do, and I'm sure it would help with some of the symptoms that I experience. And
I read this article one time that said rubbing a dog's ear reduces anxiety by like some crazy percentage. It was like 86% in humans. And I'm like, really? Like rubbing a dog's ear? And then I thought about it and I'm like, what is softer besides like maybe
right.
a newborn bunny rabbit than
That's what I was just gonna say, is it's
like
probably like the
a
soft
dog's
texture.
ear.
That's crazy. Maybe I'll have to try that. My dogs would probably be annoyed with me though.
Yeah, the
But
next time you're feeling anxious, just like rub your dog's ear or like pet your dog and see what happens. See if you're part of that 86 or whatever percent it was.
the other thing that I started doing too was I stopped putting pressure on myself. Like when I'm experiencing times of high anxiety, I don't want to go to like social gatherings or really hang out with people or anything. And it would cause more anxiety for me when I would know that like one of my friends was having like a party, or like Memorial Day is actually a perfect example. So we got invited to like 5 or 6 Memorial Day cookouts.
Oh God.
And
That sounds miserable.
yeah. And like previously I would have probably said yes to like the first 2 or 3. But bare minimum 1, and like forced myself to go. I stopped doing that. And I was just like, if I don't want to go, I don't want to go. And if I'm going to force myself to go, it's pretty much a guaranteed terrible anxiety day, and probably terrible anxiety week, just anticipating that day. And I'm not going to do it to myself or do it to my family just for the sake of not hurting somebody else's feelings or keeping up appearances. And then prior also, like, if I would decline an invitation, I would come up with some kind of excuse for it. Mostly because, not because I'm really ashamed, but mostly because people just can't understand. Like I said, if you haven't experienced it,
Right.
it's really difficult for you to understand. And I stopped doing that as well. And now I just tell people, like, I'm sorry, but we're not going to make it. My anxiety won't let me. And I just leave it at that. And if they get upset or get their feelings hurt, which has happened on quite a few occasions, I'm really sorry that I'm hurting your feelings, but I have to prioritize myself and my mental health and my family first. And I can't do that. And then also sharing it has been terrifying, and it is so uncomfortable. But
I
just
bet.
talking about it is helpful at the same time. Like, it is terrifying, especially because people can find those posts that can't relate and can give a lot of hate, and they do. I've gotten hate messages, hate comments, just like,
What?
yeah, oh yeah, because they don't understand. And so they're just like, oh, somebody should call CPS and protect your kids from you. And like, or like they want to accuse you of lying because it's like a trending thing right now, and exploiting it, and like telling you that you're awful because of the way that you choose to deal with it, like those DMs about medication and stuff. Like, some people are nice about it, and some people are really nice, and they say like, hey, I experienced this, and then like I tried this, and it worked for me, maybe it would work for you. But then there are some people that are just like, you are just an awful person for not medicating yourself. Like, how dare you?
Oh my
You're a
God.
danger to your family. You're a danger to society, and you should be medicated or committed. Or there are people that make fun of it, and they're like, look at you being a whining, crying baby. Like, why are you even talking about this stuff on the internet? That's so stupid. Like,
Who are these people?
trolls. Yeah. And to be honest,
Jeez.
I don't even care about it. I don't let it doesn't get to me because I'm not insecure about it. I really believe that. Like, the hate comments only get to you if it's something you're insecure about. And I'm not insecure about it. Or my choices. Like, I know why I've made my choices, or why I handle things the way that I do, and I know it's what's best for me. And so I don't have any doubt about that. And those things don't really get to me. But yeah, people like come after it, and that can be like a roll your eyes headache type of thing. And it can be terrifying because some of it will instigate more anxiety, like when people threaten to call CPS and say
Right.
that I'm a danger to my children and stuff like that. Like, that's always in the back of my mind before I post. And I get threats about that quite a bit. Like, there's been times that I've shared, like, I share a little bit more in my Instagram stories than I do in my feed posts. But there have been times where I've talked about my paranoid anxiety in my feed posts, or more hinted at it. And I've had people that have been like, you're going to end up being one of those women that kills your babies, and I need to protect them from you. And then I've done, like, there's only one time that I recorded a full-blown panic attack in my Instagram stories. But there's been other times where I've gone way more into depth and talked way more about it. And I've gotten DMs that are just like, you are absolutely insane and should not be caring for your kids unsupervised.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's just like, how do you even have the audacity to say something like that to someone? Like, that's not okay. And I don't know, but it's still therapeutic to share it, and to have, I think what's most therapeutic about it is that for every one of those nasty messages or comments that I get like 30 that are just the complete opposite of
Yeah,
people
there has to be
saying,
more good than bad.
oh yeah, there absolutely is. And most of it is people saying like, I experienced this too. Thank you for sharing it, because now I understand like that it could be a symptom of this other thing, or now I could like approach my doctor about it, or you gave me the courage to talk to my husband or my friend or something, or they've already talked about it and they've been diagnosed, but they're just like, thank you for letting me know that I'm not alone. And they're, while they're thanking me and saying, hey, you let me know that I'm not alone, they're kind of doing, or not kind of, they are doing the same thing for me, letting me know that I'm not sharing it for no reason and that I'm not alone either.
Yeah.
And that goes a really long way, because when you're in the middle of experiencing those kinds of anxiety issues, I'm sure that you can relate to this at least to some degree, it is so isolating. And even if like the logical thing is that other people experience this, and like logically that it'll go away at some point, whether it'll come back or not doesn't matter, it will go away, you will have some relief at some point, and other people are experiencing it, you're not the worst person in the world, you're not the first person to deal with these types of things. While you're in the thick of it, in the middle of it, it can feel like no one has experienced this before, no one understands
like
what I'm
really
going through.
isolating.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or you can think like your symptoms are the most extreme, and so you should be scared to talk about that like especially with the paranoid stuff. It's like you hear about these other things with anxiety, and kind of like just the term anxiety in general has become used enough that kind of people have become desensitized, and they know that that anxiety might be a thing, and they know that like anxiety medication exists, but anything beyond like those two simple statements they don't really understand. So you might be able to say like, oh yeah, sometimes I get heart palpitations and like I have an anxiety attack where like I feel really, really anxious, and people might be like, oh okay, like that's what anxiety is, and but they don't actually know what it feels like to have that attack, and like the other types of anxiety, like the extreme fear of social interactions or the paranoid anxiety that I was talking about, and these other like more extreme symptoms. Less people understand that. It's talked about way less often, and so it's easy to think like when you're in the middle of experiencing those things, like no one else is experiencing it quite to this degree, and I'm the only person, and no one will ever understand me, and maybe I shouldn't share it, and it's too dangerous to talk about, and what's going to happen to me if I admit it. Those types of things, but overall the sharing in general has helped me.
Absolutely. Yeah, even though there's trolls out there or people who just don't understand, I think no matter what, if you're sharing something like what you are, there's always going to be more good that comes out of it. And I don't know, I think anybody, especially like in the day and age that we live in, no matter if, you have a Facebook or Instagram, or if you are, creating content like on a podcast or for YouTube, there's always going to be like internet trolls out there. And I think we just all have to find a way to like kind of block them out and just continue striding in our missions.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, for all the people who are not internet trolls, go ahead and tell my listeners where they can find you on YouTube and Instagram and any kind of other platforms you might have.
So I do only have YouTube and Instagram right now, and you can find me on YouTube. My channel is called Loving Life as Megan. And you can find me there for, I do like cleaning motivation videos, and I do some vlogs and day in the life types of videos, a lot of decluttering and organizing. And then my Instagram is also called Loving Life as Megan. And there's just like a period between each word because that was the only handle available for it. And my Instagram is where I share most of my postpartum anxiety things. But if you want to put like a face and kind of see like my home and everything, that's where you find me on YouTube.
Definitely. And then I will also leave those links in the show notes below.
Oh, that'd
so
be great.
everybody go follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're visiting to Megan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being my guest today. I might just break this up and do like 2 parts.
Okay, cool. Whatever works.
Today's episode of the Mommy Wines podcast was brought to you by NakedWines.com, Zaya Active, and Coffee Over Cardio. Do you love the show? Show your support by shopping the Mommy Wines podcast merch store at teespring.com or by becoming a monthly supporter of the show by clicking the support button at anchor.fm/mommywines. Or you can use the support link in the show notes below. Have you been wanting to start your own podcast? Join the MW Podcast Network. All info on the MW Network, merch, partnerships, coupon codes, episodes, blog posts, and so much more can be found at themommywines.com. As always, thank you for listening, and until next week, wine moms, parent and drink responsibly.